I want to dive into something that's not really hit the news yet, but it might end up hitting the news and have some really mainstream consequences. What happened at Spruce Pine? So the hurricane hit and wiped out a lot of the roads to an area called Spruce Pine. It's the world's primary source of the raw material needed to make something called fused quartz crucibles, in which all the computer chip grade polysilicon is melted. This single road in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, it runs to the two mines that are the sole supplier of the quartz that is required to make the crucibles needed to refine silicone wafers. And I'm going to read a little quote from a book that was written about this. They interviewed a guy who was a veteran of this quartz sector. He said, hey, here's something scary. If you flew over the two mines at Spruce Pine with a crop duster loaded with a very particular powder, you could end the world's productions of semiconductors and solar panels within 6 months. What does this actually mean? Why is this important? And what happened? And what do we think is happening in Spruce Pine after this hurricane?
Bigger picture, I think this goes with the theme that we were talking about the past couple episodes, which is access to raw resources around the world. Assuming that our world just operates normally, like it's a smooth running engine and just things are transferred to one party to the other, and this country buys this and someone sells that. These supply chains everywhere around the world are breaking down because there's more and more global conflict. But this one has to do with weather, and specifically what you're talking about is this hurricane hit this area of the Carolinas, and this quartz is the finest quartz in the world semiconductor manufacturers completely rely on. So if they can't get the quartz out of there for a while, there could be huge supply chain disruption for these semiconductor companies in Taiwan and all over the world. Actually, a lot of them are being built in the US now. My personal take on this is this is something totally under the radar. No one's going to know about this until it's too late. I think they'll figure it out generally just because so much money is on the line here. But I think it does really highlight the risk that our economy and our world has right now for specific minerals, for specific metals and resources, because our world is becoming so much more reliant on electronics and communication methods and computers and cell phones and all those things. There's never been a time in history when we've been so reliant on specific resources. And the more we rely on this stuff, the more we're going to be at risk for these supply chains to really break down.
We'll post this quote because it's from a book that was written a few years ago. They're talking about what would happen if these got wiped out, these facilities. And they said we would adapt. We'd find a new process or some alternative substance, but it would be a grisly few years. When we talk about like black swan events, right? Nassim Taleb is well known for his book, The Black Swan. And he talks about, most people are thinking about black swan events incorrectly. They think about black swan events like, a financial crisis or something like that. But at the core, most of those can be predicted in some way. Often there are people that are already on the other side of the trade. A hurricane coming through, wiping out the roads, that is a true black swan event that what people could not prepare for.
Totally. And also just so people understand, this quartz is the finest quartz in the world, and there's nothing else in the world like this, at least that we found yet. And the quartz required to create or build a semiconductor has to be 99.99999. There's 7 nines after that. 99. The quartz there is the only quartz in the world that we know of exists. So to your point about there being a real risk here, like that's the only one we know about. So if this thing gets cut off, there's some serious problems.
It's definitely interesting. I think it's something to follow the next couple of weeks to see what happens from this. There will be some opportunities that come out of it as we get more information. It's just something to put on the radar of like, this happened. It hasn't yet hit the mainstream news. There are people that have been talking about this 2 years ago. 4 years ago, the importance of this area and how effectively constrained the market is to be reliant on this area. So not totally sure what's going to happen yet. It's something that did happen and we're continuing to follow it and see what's going to go from there.